Let's talk about The Book of the New Earth, Volume 1, Shadow and Claw by Wolfe. This is actually originally two novels, now typically published as one volume. There are four novels in the sequence, now typically published in two volumes. So this contains Shadow of the Torturer from 1980 and 1981's Claw of the Conciliator, Shadow and Claw. Now, this was an October buddy read I did with Liam from Liam's Lyceum. We will be doing a discussion on these two books, I think, within the next week or so, and that'll be uploaded. And once it is, I will make sure that I tell you about it here in case you're interested in listening to our spoiler-filled thoughts. This is a spoiler-free review. There is technically a plot. Let's give the kind of summary of a plot. Severian is a torturer's apprentice. That's a respectable and legal job in the enormous city of Nessus. He ends up breaking his guild's rules and he's sent off to a provincial city to be sort of executioner, law enforcer. And these first two books show how he gets exiled and a large part of his journey to this city, Thrax. But the book isn't really about the plot. I mean, the plot is fine, but it's... and I'll get to this, the plot is a vehicle for something else. It's actually hard to summarise and sum up quickly what this book is about. This is a book which triumphantly addresses a wide array of complicated themes, which is all via a masterwork character, one of the great characters, Severian the Torturer. And this is all told via Severian's point of view. It's a single point of view, first person, historic POV. And he, in these volumes, he does include a couple of other documents a couple of times. In the second book, for instance, he includes what is seemingly a kind of children's story, and he includes a play script, for instance. That's two chapters, one each. But the first thing is that very early on in this book, Severian tells us, on the one hand, that he has a perfect memory, but on the other hand, that he is mildly insane. Those two things are important. Everything in this book, therefore, has to be decoded at some level. Severian is able to offer lots of detail when he wants, but it's not always clear what he's remembering. The narrative jumps. Bizarre coincidences go unexplained, intentionally unexplained by Wolfe. Severian has strange intuitions about other characters, and you don't know if he's right or not. There's no hand-holding. This is very Wolfian. The other book I've read by him, well, technically, if these are two books, the third book I've read by him, Fifth Head of Cerberus, is, if anything, even thornier and more difficult than this book. Wolfe believes his audience can understand tough things, and he gives you the tools to make headway, but he doesn't do it for you. And Neil Gaiman puts it this way, that the first rule of reading Wolfe is to trust the text implicitly, because everything you need is there. But the second rule of reading Wolfe is to not trust him as far as you can throw him. Everything you need is here, but you have to dwell in the text. You can't let it get away from you. You have to pay attention. The unique tone of a fever dream, this kind of confusion, comes from the top down. So world building, let's talk about that classic topic. It's really wonderful. It's accomplished by gesture and hint as often as by explanation. This is a far future dying Earth, under a red sun and an irrigated green moon. The elite of the city of Nessus live in a vast, strange collection of metal towers that seem beyond any current state of construction, beyond their knowledge. And there are weird animals and plants, and occasionally hints the universe beyond of this place that humanity has colonised while Earth, URTH, has been left behind. And that's that. In one way, you think, oh, that's not as far from Vance as you might think in terms of dying Earth books, dying Earth settings. But it feels totally different. It feels very different because it's not simply a kind of picaresque lark. The fever dream component definitely touches this world building. How far away are things from each other, for instance? Nessus itself seems impossibly vast. Severian seems to semi-randomly wander around and fall into geographical coincidences. He was going this way and suddenly he's at this place he wanted to be. Severian's memory, apparently perfect, cannot unpick the geography of his travels. The way other characters work and are introduced is equally difficult. People just appear. Sometimes they just disappear without much in the way of explanation. Who or what people are is often confusing. For instance, who or what exactly is Boldanders? What about the procurer at the brothel in Shadow of the Torturer? Who is Vodulus? Wolfe doesn't seem to think you need things spelled out. He gives many versions of each character, so it's not just that you could work it out if you do enough theorizing. It's also that there are different contradictory versions of each character. Severian, particularly, is an incredible character. He is writing this all in retrospect from some position of relative ease and power in the future, but how far in the future? Sometimes it seems like he's about to finish the story and it's more or less up to date, and sometimes it seems like it was a long time ago. Why is he writing this story? What kind of man is Severian? Because alongside Severian's memory and his sanity, another major theme, in some ways the major theme, is his character. I don't mean he is a character, I mean his character, his virtue, his morality, I guess. This is a Dying Earth book, but Severian is as far from Kugel as you can imagine. I don't just mean because they have different morals or ethics, I mean in terms of what kind of character is up for discussion. Kugel is intentionally a revolting character, sometimes perhaps more revolting than Vance could intend, but Severian is a man raised to torture people. He's a man without knowledge of their guilt. He is an executioner who executes people whose guilt he may doubt. He very early on becomes associated with the great rebel Vodulus, but whenever Vodulus comes up later, it's not clear whether this rebellion and Vodulus are good or not. But Severian has essentially no interest in the rebellion as a vehicle of moral purity. That's not why he's interested in the first place. And yet Severian is a man seeking to be good through the mists of his apparent insanity. He is going through growing pains throughout the book. He's exiled because of a moral dilemma. He faces these dilemmas throughout the book. And though he's a man of broken psyche, of moral ill health, he nonetheless is on a quest for something greater and better than himself. And here is an exceptionally clever and powerful thing that Wolfe does. The world often seems unreal. You don't know where people have gone. You don't know what... Is this a genuine coincidence that we're just meant to think was a coincidence? Is this something where Severian hasn't understood what's really gone on, that he's confused about? The characters are often baffling, hard to parse. What kind of conversation is Severian even having? Who is this person that he's talking to? Is this person or this person? How does this connect to this other thing? Why are people acting like they do? But the world concentrates and it becomes more real when Severian interacts with those who have a moral purpose or who have a moral centre. For instance, his friend Jonas, his lover Dorcas, the Christ-like prisoner in the antechamber Nicorete. These, even when we don't understand the background of each character, and in all three of those cases, particularly with Dorcas and Jonas, one of the great mysteries of book 2 is Jonas, and to some degree the antechamber where Nicorete is. And in book 1 and 2, Dorcas is an important kind of mysterious character. How does she turn up going with Severian? Who is she? Why can't she remember things? These characters aren't therefore the most fully fleshed out in terms of, I know their backstory and so I know to care about them, but rather we see that earnest human interaction, the giving of one person to another person without qualification. These things make life in Wolfe's view more real and more meaningful. They make us more sane and functional. And this is clever and not just powerful because it is a matter of Wolfe's technique, his structure, and his writing that does this. The confusing insanity, that's often dialed up, dials down when Severian is in these interactions with people. These are really quite powerful moments. And that's possibly what makes book 2 very slightly better than book 1 within this, for me, is that the moral power of the book is increased. The issues where in book 1 I was sometimes distracted by Wolfe, very occasionally, but sometimes distracted by Wolfe flirting with these kinds of plot structures and time structures. And though I enjoyed it, though I thought, wow, this is great fun, I was also occasionally like, I don't know what's going on enough. I feel like you've jumped away just a half second too soon. And though you can always say, well, that he intended to do that, it was something which felt like just a very slight fragility in what was an excellent book. But in book 2 of this volume, Claw of the Conciliator, That disappeared as I think real power entered the book. Not just these kind of interesting ideas and things that he was playing with, but this wider theme of I guess what makes us human, who is a human, and when, and also the themes which are there in book one as well, but which intensify in book two. Masks. What is how do we define our identity? Where does our identity come from? There's so many other things which are marvellous in these books. The way this very far future attempts to deal with human past, things we remember, places we might know about, animals we might know about, or anything else. This idea that things have warped and changed, but there are these recognisable themes, these sort of Jungian archetypes or eternal hero tropes that continue into the future, into the story of the future. Really very powerful. So no, this is an incredible book. I can't recommend it to everyone. I mean, what book can you recommend to everyone? What I mean is it's hard. It is a writer who believes that you can understand things, and that's a very dangerous thing because there's no hand-holding. This is something where you have to sink in to begin to rise out, and that's something which just won't be for everyone at every point in time. But just at a objective aesthetic level, I'd say this is a great novel, an all-time great novel. Probably, I think, the best thing I've read this year. I will be reading volume 2 of Book of the New Sun, probably in December, I think. I may move on to the other sequences he wrote in this kind of world, which aren't direct follow-ons, they are just other stories he wanted to tell, though I don't know when that will be. But it is not too late to read this and get involved in the conversation, so please do. We've talked about it a bit at Andrew's and Nico's Wizardly Duo Discord. I'll put that link in the description. Anyway, what do you think of it? If you've read it, what are your other favourite Dying Earth books and stories? Tell me in the comments. Till next time.